If your idea of a New York City home is small, think smaller. No, it's not a hotel room. This is a fully furnished apartment. At just 300 square feet, it's enough to make even some city dwellers feel claustrophobic. But the developers say this is the future of affordable urban living.
Small space does not necessarily have to mean a degradation in quality of life.
Christopher Bledsoe co-founded the company that designed Carmel Place. It's New York's first micro apartment building. The city made an exception to a rule that requires new apartments be at least 400 square feet, and it's proposing to change the zoning rule altogether. Advocates have been pushing for years for more affordable housing, especially for single people. According to real estate firm MNS, the average price for a Manhattan studio apartment in November was more than $2,900, a one-bedroom more than $4,000. These micro-apartment rents are between $2,600 and $3,000 a month. Affordable units based on income can go for as little as $950.
Space in a unit is just one element, one attribute that goes into defining the overall living experience.
Builders have employed some design tricks to make the small space work. A bed folds down from the wall over the couch. A clever desk expands into a dining table.
By sacrificing, say, 200 square feet in your studio, you can also get other trade-offs that work to your advantage, like housekeeping or Wi-Fi. And in this case, we're actually providing weekly visits from personal butler service.
Sacrificing space for the convenience of living in the big city. Robert Bumstead, Associated Press.
When you're a kid, you're fascinated by.
Trying to just show you all a little taste of Agenda 21 in Paris. Got the same thing going on here, just smaller scale. Train station, stacked housing. This is just the start here, though. It'll get worse.
Hi, this is Karen Bracken, and I'm sitting in the Schmitz Brewery Piazza in Northern Liberties, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And what this is a huge paved piazza surrounded, encircled by 4 levels of stack and pack apartments with restaurants and businesses all below. It is your typical ideal communist city.
The goal under Agenda 21 is to get everyone in dense cities where transportation to other cities is ultimately limited to trains, and where people living in these dense cities largely do not own cars. Well, what they are doing is they are converting the transportation system and the development program such that all new development for the next 25 years must be within a half a mile of what they call transit-oriented centers. They call these priority development areas. Now, in these very compact, very dense dynamics, they intend for most of the population to be relocated in these stack and pack housing units. And with these stack and pack housing units, there'll be no capacity for automobiles. You will live in what they are calling a walkable community. In other words, you come down from your 14th floor and you walk to your job.
Or have a bicycle. They love bicycles, they want you walking, and they want to get you out of your car because your car gives you independence. And the last thing they want is independence. They want to be able to control everything you do, and so they're going to have their rapid transit system. That's what rapid transit is, or public utilities, public transportation. But as far as your freedom is soon to be simply a remembrance of things past. Go ahead.
Well, that is true. Now, what we've got to understand is that your city council, your board of supervisors, are blankly going along with this, whether you're in the Bay Area or anywhere across the United States, and that is because if you fight this system, your political career is over.
Environmental groups have effectively created a public image as organizations caring for helpless species and protecting environments. This has allowed them to implement an agenda in America that, if fully exposed, would be opposed by the majority of the people. In fact, most people supporting these organizations are not aware of their long-term objective, even though it is no secret. Take a look at the wildlands map. It defines where environmentalists want to take America in the very near future. The areas in red will be off limits to humans. The areas in yellow represent buffer zones, where limited use is allowed primarily to travel to and from populated areas. The areas in green are where normal use by humans will be allowed. However, by the environmentalists' own admission, these normal use areas would be restricted. When this plan was first published in 1992, the author, Regrann, explained how their agenda would affect the human population. He stated, eventually a wilderness network would dominate a region and thus would itself constitute the matrix, with human habitations being the islands. No one, not even the longtime opponents of the environmental movement, believed such a transforming agenda was possible. However, it is being implemented quickly through innocent-sounding programs that most Americans support. Wilderness areas, critical habitat for endangered species, wetlands, roadless areas, national heritage areas, and other restrictive programs are sold to the public as necessary to protect nature, or as assurance that Americans will always have a place to escape from the heavily populated cities. More inventive tools and programs, such as conservation easements, smart growth, open space, and greenlining, are being promoted as a way to control growth. What all these programs have in common is extinguishing the private property rights of American citizens and transferring the control of the property to elite land trusts or directly to the government. The environmental movement would not be able to implement their agenda without the cooperation of our government at all levels, including state and federal officials and even county commissioners. To help facilitate the environmental goals, the Clinton administration quietly created the Gap Analysis Program, or GAP for short. GAP divides the land into ecosystem regions and identifies the properties not yet under the control of state and federal governments. In other words, private property. These private holdings are then targeted for preservation by government agencies and land trusts through conservation easements, purchase, and condemnation. Although the GAP program has not been completed in all states, the data from this project is already being strategically used to target landowners. Not surprisingly, the areas of protection defined by GAP follow closely along the same boundaries as those shown on the wildlands map. It is frightening to see how much of America's land has recently been consumed as a result of this agenda. For instance, the state of Florida utilized the data from GAP to implement an aggressive preservation plan called Florida Forever. Since the early 1990s, over 2 million acres in the state of Florida have been locked up through this program. The private property owners within the target area were forced to give up their land under the pressure of extreme environmental regulations, purchase, and outright condemnation. And the Florida Forever campaign is not complete. At the current rate that environmentalists are implementing their agenda in every state, in every county, and soon in every town, private property is quickly being eliminated. It will not take the 80 to 100 years they originally projected to complete their task. They are much closer to achieving their goal than anyone realizes. 6% of America's land mass is currently developed. Only 3% of America is classified as urban, yet 77% of all Americans live in these urban areas. The rest is still largely untouched by humans. The problem is not that our nation is being overdeveloped. The problem is as old as time. It is about who will own the land. Large amounts of the nation's natural resources are still owned by private citizens. America's founders vehemently opposed the concept of government or elitists owning the land in America, which would result in the citizens being leaseholders and serfs. One of the most well-known property rights advocates of our time, Wayne Hage, said it best. Either you have the right to own property or you are property. Make no mistake. This battle is not about whether the land will be used, resources extracted, and wealth created, but by whom. Karl Marx wrote in the Communist Manifesto, "The theory of the communist may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property." America's founding father, John Adams, stated, "Property must be secured or liberty cannot exist." Which course will America take? Hear directly from Dr. Michael Kaufman, the man who first uncovered the wildlands map and presented it to the U.S. Senate. Kaufman will reveal the details of the environmental agenda and how the government is helping to transfer land ownership in America. He explores each region and explains the tactics they are using in the different areas. You will learn what might be used to target your land. Environmentalists are counting on their agenda never being fully revealed. Taking Liberty is committed to seeing that it is. Their plan must be stopped before all of our liberty is taken.
Now, to get an NGO accreditation, you have to go to the United Nations. And the price of getting an NGO designation is that you have to become an implementer of Agenda 21 policy.
I saw this in the World Economic Forum, and I had to talk about it because it's such a clear indicator of the drastic shift in society, not that we're facing in the future and generally down the road, but that is actually happening right now. It's actually taking place. And if you like your doctor and want to keep him, you're going to love this. So this was on wefforum.org. That's the Davos site, the Davos Elite. And it was written by Ida Auken, a member of parliament in Denmark. And I checked, and as far as I could find, she hasn't been to Bilderberg or anything like that. But again, she's a member of the Davos Elite.
We are 7 billion people now on the planet. We're going up to 9 billion. Think about 3 billion people entering the middle class, all wanting cars, mobile phones, computers, eating meat. I mean, this is a huge pressure on the resources we have.
But she appears to be what I assume would be a Bernie Sanders style socialist. But she's also hoping that people in the near future will own nothing. That's their big answer to income inequality. They've been talking about it at these conferences for years. They've been talking about universal income, what to do when people can't work. And their answer is people of the future will own nothing. The Davos Elite, preparing for their annual confab next month, have acknowledged the growing problem of the underman who's threatened by the rising cost of living, discouraged by the lack of better paying opportunities overall, and all the other factors that go into living in the society that we've been in. And the answer of the 1%, and those even fewer who could be counted among the billionaires of the planet who own more than anyone else listed in the phone book, and their answer is that we should own nothing at all. And we talked a lot about the smart city, how much that's being used for control, but this goes beyond anything. It's straight into Marxist serfdom, actually without the problem of work and without the problem of the working man's struggle. So it's neo-feudalism, but with a new twist. Here's how it goes. Here's what Ida Auken wrote in her column for Davos. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. I sound like I'm from a Dr. Seuss novel. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. One by one, these things became free, so it ended up not making sense for us to own much anymore.
Why do you want to own your cell phone? I mean, you want the function, you want the service, right? Why do you want to own a cell phone if you can just lease it? And if you lease, why shouldn't you lease your refrigerator or your washing machine or your dishwasher? Or why do you want to own it? I mean, it's not like the plastic in the middle. It's like, I own a broke dishwasher. I mean, wow.
People don't own cars anymore. There's driverless vehicles and flying cars for longer journeys. I think we've had that one promised before.
So why don't you want to go into a business model where the company owns it?
Ida Auken writes that in 2030 in our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we don't need it. Someone else is sleeping in your living room when you're not around, or cooking in your kitchen when you're done making dinner. She writes, my living room is being used for business meetings when I'm not there, and once in a while I will choose to cook for myself. It's easy. Even the necessary kitchen equipment isn't owned. It's delivered to the door by drones within minutes. Environmental problems seem so far